Well, here we are, the final issue of the main Sonic Adventure adaptation. It's been a long ride, but before we get off, we need to get through this part. So let's recap the previous issue. Chaos has successfully absorbed the 7 Super Emeralds, 1 from Tails' plane, and 6 from Station Square's power plant. During its attack on Station Square, Tikal appears and rips the emeralds from the monster so Sonic can absorb their positive energies to fight it. That's pretty much it really, except for Eggman showing up and getting owned and the Freedom Fighters helping out the civilians. Other than that, on with the review. The fight between Super Sonic and Perfect Chaos continues, neither side having the advantage at the moment. They are causing collateral damage as Antoine is hit in the leg with debris. Knuckles wastes no time hauling Antoine out of the danger zone despite Bunny being right there to help. Fair enough, the fight between 2 superpowered beings is unpredictable. Knuckles then heads off to end the Perfect Chaos threat because, according to Tikal, Perfect Chaos needs a lot of juice to short circuit. Remember this for later. He arrives at the flooded power plant and dives in so he can reach the generator. Back to the big fight, it's taking a toll on the combatants. Still, Sonic believes Chaos is slower than he is, and a chase sequence begins, eventually taking them near the power plant. Knuckles arrives at the generator to find it disconnected and out of position, so he dives back into the water so he can realign them. At first, he cannot do it, but as he starts realizing he's the only one that can save the day, his inner chaos powers awaken. He holds the generator in place long enough to zap Perfect Chaos back down to his zero form. Yes, the great threat to Station Square got beaten by electricity. So much for being perfect. Another side effect of depowering Chaos is all of that energy has apparently reformed into the 7 Chow. Remember, they were turned into Super Emeralds when they stopped Chaos originally. With the fighting over, Tikal leaves with Chaos and the Chow to head back into their home, the Black Emerald. Speaking of leaving, Knuckles is off with a bag full of Master Emerald shards that he just happens to have. No, seriously, we never saw him bring this bag with him to Station Square, nor did we see him gather actual shard pieces. Not to mention, where did he stash it during the whole Perfect Chaos mess? Maybe he had the power to store them in another dimension or something. Wouldn't surprise me given who wrote this part. Anyway, while the Perfect Chaos stuff was happening, there's that whole Chaotix and Locke versus the Cat People subplot that needs resolution. What we have here is your standard trial by combat, with Locke taking on the Cat People's chosen champion, Razor Claw. After a brief struggle, Locke wins, of course, and is ready to talk to the Queen. She's leery of outsiders, Echidna especially, and wondered if the island crashing is a prelude to an invasion. Locke assures her that he's only here to fix a problem and to save the Chaotix. He speaks about his family history, which leads to the Queen showing him something we'll see in a moment. Let me point out again that the Locke and the Cat People stuff takes place in the main story as cutaways from the Perfect Chaos fight. I say this because we are now moving on to the actual backup story, concluding Knuckles' overall tale. He returns to the floating island where the Brotherhood of Guardians have constructed a new area to house and to better draw power from the Master Emerald. Knuckles dumps the shards in the center and they immediately reformed into the Master Emerald. With the island heading back into the sky, Thunderhawk, the purple guy, takes Knuckles to the mysterious cat country so his subplot and the Cat People subplot can hook up. He reunites with the Chaotix, who take him to where the Queen took Locke earlier this issue. More Echidna ruins, complete with the statue of Tikal's father, Pachacamac. We then get a brief history of the tribe Knuckles was named after. Specifically, the Echidnas arriving at the mysterious cat country, Pachacamac and the warriors wanting to stay while the scholars and laborers left for someplace else, and so on. Boy, this story sounds familiar. Oh yeah, Tikal told Knuckles this 2 issues earlier. And it's the same writer too. The story and the official Sonic Adventure adaptation ends with Knuckles saying, "Guess what, Dad? I found the emerald." If you can't tell by Knuckles taking center stage and all the Echidna lore, this entire issue was written by Penders. And boy, Knuckles takes, or in my opinion, steals the spotlight in the climax. I'll be upfront, I'm not a fan of this. It's one thing if he helps an injured Antoine get out of the danger zone quickly, but to be the one that ultimately ends the Perfect Chaos threat? Couldn't he cut down on his Echidna love for just this story? True, Chaos has been connected to Echidna lore in the game and the comic, but in the end, it was Sonic who was the hero. Let's take a deeper look at what went wrong with the resolution. Remember what I said last time about Chaos being connected to Station Square's power and environmental systems? Well, you can throw all of that out the window. Okay, the environmental systems is probably why it's dark and gloomy. Anyway, I thought they were going with this scenario based on what was established last time, that they were going to suck away the power from Perfect Chaos. But then, that's assuming Penders was actually going to use Bowler's ideas. I think I'm just speculating here. Now for the real reason the power plant was created. Remember the line about Tikal saying zapping Perfect Chaos will short circuit him? 1. Chaos is not a robot. And don't say artificial chaos. Meta-wise, they didn't exist yet. And 2, when did Tikal mention this? I've reread all the scenes featuring her, and not once did she bring this up. Remember, in issue 82, she said stopping it originally came at a price. I assume it involves getting sealed in the Black Emerald, and the 7 Chao becoming Super Emeralds after draining Chaos of its power. Although Bowlers came up with the latter idea. Now we have zapping it enough will weaken it. Yeah. Assuming Tikal told Knuckles off panel, shouldn't this information be known to the reader beforehand? You know, setup and payoff? Perfect Chaos being zapped back to its zero form with electricity. It can go either way within the context of this adaptation. What they seem to be going for is water plus electricity is bad, which it is. But this is a creature powered by the negative energies of 7 Super Emeralds. Electricity should not affect it at all. However, Chaos 6, if you recall, was vulnerable to Eggman's ice bots, and Perfect Chaos, presumably, was getting weaker thanks to the prolonged fight with Supersonic. The point I'm trying to make is, Knuckles should not have stolen Supersonic's victory. I understand having Sonic repeatedly hitting Chaos in the head doesn't translate well into the page. So here's what you can do. Have Knuckles be the linchpin. The power plant zapping plan doesn't depower Perfect Chaos. Instead, it exposes a weakness, Chaos's brain, thus allowing Supersonic to charge into the beast, and that's what takes it out.
Hey, I'll play with you some other time.
Well, that's not what happened. The resolution to Knuckles' shard quest. That was way too rushed. I'm not going to get into where he got the bag to hold the pieces. We barely saw him emerald hunting, and the only emeralds he found, he later lost to Chaos. We can assume the majority of the hunt happened off panel, and perhaps he recovered the shards from the egg carrier before rendezvousing with Sonic. Who knows at this point? The new location for the Master Emerald. I'm fine with it. The original Chaos Chamber was destroyed thanks to Eggman, and it resembles its current location in the game. Plus, it honors the Knuckles clan ancestry. Which brings us to the Cat People subplot. It's still filler. Locke fights their champion, wins, and resolves things peacefully with the Queen, and Knuckles later joins them. That's all really. Again, I'm all for world building, but at least try and make it interesting, please. Here comes the moment of truth. I said at the start of these reviews that I would give my final score at the end of the adaptation. So for the entire main Sonic Adventure adaptation, I'm giving it a score of 4 out of 10. Below average, yes, but if you followed my reviews, you kinda understand why. Let me share with you whatever behind the scenes tidbits I could find. If it turns out they're inaccurate, feel free to correct me in the comments below. The adaptation came out around the time of Sonic Adventures and the Dreamcast's North American release, which makes sense. Some of you may not know this, but it takes months to create an issue from the writing stage to the penciling to the inking and so on and so forth. Also note that the Japanese version of Sonic Adventure was already out at this time. Since this game is the Hedgehog's first successful leap into 3D platforming, you'd think Sega would give the Archie staff a copy so they can reference it while making the comic. From what I've read, that's not the case, which is odd because you'd think Sega would want to spread the word of the game. Rumor is, to get the story beats, a staff member, possibly cover artist Spaz, imported the game so he could play and recount the events to those involved. Again, I could be wrong about this, but that would explain why some things are off. I'll get into some other reasons in a bit. As for why word balloons have some game dialogue, the English lines might have been recorded by then, and the dialogue could have been modified in the actual issues. That's my guess. Even with plenty of Sonic Adventure material, this was a Frankenstein's monster of an adaptation, with different writers injecting their own material without collaborating with one another. For example, Bowlers didn't utilize the cat people, and Penders did not touch the citizens of Station Square. Part of it is due to the structuring situation I mentioned before, about how the content from the canceled Knuckles series was placed into the main comic. To touch on that briefly, for issues 81 and 82, I've covered 79 and 80 earlier, remember? The Sonic and Knuckles stuff is obvious, but I think the Amy story was meant for the Sonic book, Gamma's story was meant for the Knuckles series, and issue 81's cover is a modified version of what would have been the cover for Knuckles 34, given how it connects to issue 80. Issues 83 and 84 are a bit odd given that Bowlers wrote the former and Penders the latter. You'd think 84 was meant for the Knuckles series, but I've read both parts were meant for the main book. Whatever the case, it's clear that the adaptation needed focus. If the editor did a better job, there would have been tighter continuity between the parts. What should have been done is remove unnecessary subplots, take out certain characters that don't contribute to the plot, though Nate Morgan and possibly Sally can stay so they can negotiate with Station Square's government, and maybe the writers can, communicate at least this once. Because of how this adaptation was made, Archie's staff would change how they would handle adaptations of then soon-to-be released games. After Sonic Adventure, any game coming out would only get 5 or so pages, or sometimes a single issue, dedicated to that game, would only reveal its opening parts, and end with a message saying, to find out more, play the game. Some stories would be canon to Archie Sonic, others won't be. If you like this adaptation overall, just make sure you know what you're getting into when reading it. I think it's time we move on from Sonic Adventure, but before we do, there is an epilogue featuring Sonic and the Freedom Fighters going against one more threat to Station Square. We'll talk about it more in issue 85. Too bad this isn't a game. Believe me, Sonic, at this point, I'd rather play the game. Longer than reading the adaptation? Yes, but at least it's a lot more fun.